So with Frank Lampard's first full season ahead of us, many fans are wondering how the team might set up this year. After being drafted in late November 24, starting in 17th position, Super Frank's team climbed all the way to 5th spot on the final day, ultimately proving Doug King right that we are in fact a top 6 deck. After a tough 2-game battle with Sunderland, ultimately losing in the last kick of the game, it's time to regroup and start again. Having a strong squad, there's no calls for a complete rebuild. However, fans will be looking to Doug King to get his checkbook out and ultimately make some signings. So, where does Lampard go from here? Well, he already has a strong squad, and with a full pre-season, you'd hope he'd be able to implement a few more ideas to get his team working in a slick operation. After a successive amount of wins at home last season, he's also made the CBS a bit of a fortress, which could put us in a good position moving forward to next season. The question is how do we make that step back up to the Premier League? First, we need to understand how Frank Lampard likes to set his teams up, typically opting for a 4-3-3 formation with a game plan of methodical possession-based play, focusing down the wings to help break teams down. But take a look at this. Now this is a pass network, which just illustrates how players are positioned and interact with each other on the pitch. Now what we can determine from this is the importance of Matt Grimes and how he likes to interact with the defenders, often dropping back deeper to receive the ball, allowing space to develop further up the pitch. Now, we're taking a real game scenario here versus Sunderland. You can clearly see Grimes dropping back a good 40 yards there just to receive the ball, almost operating in a back three, which just allows our wing-backs to get further up the pitch and operate more attacking down those wings. Now, another key player for us is Jack Rodoni, who, if we bring up his heat map here, you'll see there's a lot of activity down the wings. Now, if we do a quick comparison to that of Bristol City's Scott Twine, who stays more central, you can actually see that Jack Rodoni prefers to stay away from that central area and instead opt for the wings to find pockets of space where he can do more damage. However, as that ball progresses, Rodoni has such clever movement that he will often find himself re-rotated back into that central position to find himself in more goal-scoring opportunities. And so I want to strip it back further in just to show you. I'm going to bring up 3 pass maps here from examples of Preston, Plymouth and also Middlesbrough, and whilst on the surface it can be cluttered, when we remove the unsuccessful passes and just focus on the successful ones, we can clearly see a structured pattern of play. We'll have phase 1, in which we retain the ball, where Grimes will drop deep and keep possession in that back half, and then we'll progress it up the pitch when those spaces appear, driving the opposition back into their own half, only to then look down to the wingers to then find space and find that opportunity to cross one into the box, ultimately leading to chances. And then when we look at our intentional goal assists, you can see a clear structure again from our wingers, where we're trying to push the ball up to the wings, down the pitch, and then swing one in from these most dangerous areas where we can find space within the box. And then we flick over to our actual goals, and you can see that we're getting a lot of these balls in on high XG areas. It should come as no surprise that we got the most headed goals in Europe last season. So where do Coventry go from here? Well, we've already made 2 smart additions in Kane Kessler-Hayden and Miguel Angel Brau. Kessler-Hayden joins on a 4-year deal for an undisclosed fee believed to be about 3.5 million. Now, he has had time at Preston on loan last season, winning the club's Player of the Season and Young Player of the Season awards. Being a right-back by trade, we can closely compare him to Milan. Now, some impressive stats, particularly on progressive carries and successful take-ons, which is something that we may look to deploy. Whilst Kessler-Hayden has played left-back, he's predominantly been a right-back in the last season, and we can dream that Milan stays at the club, but potentially, with him departing, it could leave him as the sole right-back. Now, Brau joins from Granada to Coventry as a free agent, and whilst there's limited stats, he has been highly regarded by Granada fans. Now, this is an interesting addition, perhaps seeking to solidify our left-hand side, where we can clearly see there's a lot of targeting going on from our opponents, and that's where it has led to a lot of opponent goal assists. So it could be an area that Frank is looking to solidify moving forward. From the stats that are available, there's no real clear standout performer other than Brau is significantly taller than De Silva, which is not difficult. So where else needs improving? Well, one position Lampard may focus on is a new goalkeeper. Whilst Dovin came into the squad and started to produce some great performances, he unfortunately suffered an injury which set him back. This left Coventry scrambling with some questionable second choice goalkeeper performances. So when we break down the stats of goals conceded by Coventry, we can see a large amount of shots being taken outside of the box that are being conceded. And then when we break it down further into XG areas, we're conceding a lot from low XG areas, which may hint at some keeper problems. When we look at how the team like to play with this possession-based and wing play, one area that seems to pop up is this gap within the central forwards. Now, as we progress the team forward, and Rodoni, as we know, likes to drift out wide, We can sometimes find this gap which forms where our strikers are a little bit hard to find, particularly if we're playing teams with a low block. It can lead to a frustrating day. One man who I think can make a real difference for this team is Victor Torp. Now, he is a player that likes to roam forward and find those pockets of space within the gap that we're missing there. We saw that against the game against Sunderland, where he was able to roam through and find Hadji Wright on a number of occasions with through balls. I think this could be a real standout season for him coming forward. Now, another solution to this is to bring in a new centre forward. Now, Adriano Bertaccini is one that's been suggested, and the reason being is that he's a lot different profile player with pace to break lines, but also he'll happily drop back within that space to collect the ball and change the game parameters. However, with our recent addition of strikers and spending a lot of money, it could seem unlikely that we'll bring in another. And I think a more viable solution will probably be that Lampard will take a look at some additional wingers. And whilst we've got some fantastic wingers in Sakamoto and Mason Clark, we don't really have the depth that if one gets injured, we can make a straight replacement. And whilst Wright can play on the left, it does leave us stretch. This is something that we lack in. Now, if we look at a top team like Leeds, for example, they've got such good strong depth in this area. They've got Dan James, Manor Solomon, and if it's not working, they can bring on Yotto and Ramazani to switch the game up. And that is what we could implement at Coventry. Ultimately, Coventry already have a really strong squad moving into the next season. It's just if we can stay competitive with other big teams either dropping down from the Premier League or coming up and spending big money. We've already seen some big transfers coming through. So it's just about how we can stay competitive within that environment. And I'm sure that Lampard is cooking up a storm for this season. And if we bring in some more transfers, we could be in a really strong position. So the question is, if you were manager, who would you bring in?